Hello, my name is Annalie Carruthers, and I am the organizer of the Toyin Falola interviews. Welcome. In this series, Dr. Falola, globally renowned scholar and professor, will interview scholars and policymakers whose work and research are particularly relevant for the African continent and its peoples, including the diaspora. Dr. Falola will also discuss the scholars' most recent books with them. The ultimate goal in this series is to promote the work of great minds and to spread knowledge to the general public about current intellectual projects that these great minds are pursuing. Research themes can include, but are not limited to, the following: African affairs, African migration, religion, culture, intellectual history, development issues, theories, women's rights, disability rights, post-colonial society in Africa and other parts of the global South, and globalization. These discussions will be recorded over Zoom, and these recordings will be distributed on the Toyin Falola Network Facebook page, Twitter, and website. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy.
Thank you very much. Unless you have suggestions on reordering it, my proposal is Ken will start, and then we follow it with Pamela, and Kono will start, do so, and Jonathan will begin, after listening to all of them, do a lot of wrap-up, the things they missed, the complications and the debates that arise from the interview. So I'm giving him a burden of listening carefully to all what you are saying so that he does the wrap-up for us. Let me start with Ken by introducing Ken, distinguished professor of English at Michigan State University, and is now emeritus. For many years, he's worked on African cinema and literature, diaspora and post-colonial studies, and has written a number of major books. Among his 1994 Thresholds of Change in African Literature. Another one, Less Than One and Double, a feminist reading of African women's writing. Trash, a study of African cinema, Viewed from Below, published in 2013, and has edited so many books, including recently, 2018, A Companion to African Film. Welcome, Ken, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Toyin. And
Your first question.
Hello, Tunde. It's wonderful to see you from the other side of the world. I hope you are well.
Thank you, Ken.
And yeah. So I know for time, let me jump in. I have four major areas of four questions, but the questions I want to frame them. And for all the questions, I have clips that I want to have us look at. So let me begin jump right into the first. It seems to me this is, I hope, appropriate for today in a strange way. My first question turns on the question of power. You've represented power in your films, Sarawaida, for example, and elsewhere. You've described power in really interesting ways. We're in a period in which power is being turned against the people by the gun. In Nigeria, everybody is reading about it, very worried and concerned about it. So it seems to me this might be an appropriate moment to introduce this question. My question is going to be basically, how do we think about power in Nigeria today, and how you want your films to address that question? But I want to frame it by the comment you made in the film Sarawoida, where the Kabiyesi is overthrown, and the chief says to him, there are three kinds of power. You represent this a couple of times in the film. You have the power of the people, the body of citizens, so to speak, the power of the state with the guns that the state represents, and then the power of spiritual forces. When the Kabiyesi speaks, when the chief speaks to the Kabiyesi, or to the military ruler in that film, he says, of three sources of power, you have one. You've got the gun of being a soldier, but you need money to buy people, and you need metaphysical power against your enemies. Three different kinds of power that's represented again in Tioula Nile and even in Campus Queens. So the first clip I want to show, if Obina will show it, the very first is a clip about one form of power represented by what we all call the big man in Campus Queen, 2004 film.
Hello there, how are you?
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
His Excellency is not in.
I know. He just called me and I promised to come and see you. But you look more beautiful than what they reported to me. You will soon know me well. This place is for inner circle only. Hey, Candy!
Sir!
Give me a shot. Double.
Yes, sir.
My daughter, what are you doing in the university?
I'm reading law, sir.
Law? Yes, sir. Who wrote it? Abeokuta wrote another one.
No, sir. I'm reading to become a lawyer.
Oh, you want to become a lawyer? That is very good. Nice. My daughter, I have to go. And if His Excellency does anything you don't like, just tell me. I am the only person in charge of this place. Okay?
Okay, sir. No, thank you, sir. Don't worry, sir. Thank you.
What do you mean by don't worry? If I go worry, I will be worried for this small amount. If I'll never give a child something, we say thank you. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Are you not an African?
Yes, sir.
Hey,
Thank you, sir.
okay. Yeah, Davo.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Candy!
Sir!
What you love?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Which one next, Professor?
Oh,
Harrow?
okay, so let's just leave that for now, that clip, and there clearly the clip gives us different ways to think about power. So that's I want to put the question to TK. I see power there in many different forms, but you're the one who created that scene, created the military governor. They represented some kind of, I'd say, representation of power in society. And I wonder if my question now makes sense to you. How do we think about power in Nigeria using that clip as just one example?
Well, power comes in many different forms. And you can see this. If you pay careful attention to the society, it is everywhere. Just not the ruler, but the ruled as well. And Fela Nicola sang, and he gives different examples of how power can be used. Sometimes not just the ruler. There are other forces around the ruler. There are mini power, if there's such a word, that goes around the ruler himself. Sometimes the leader or the ruler has no power to deal with the powers around him because it goes out of control. And it shows the desperation that people can go to not only to hang on to power, because they do it at all costs. And sometimes they hang on to power till they die, at it. So it is obvious, because I'm responding to the environment, what I read in the newspapers, what I watch on television, what I hear from the people, from the society. So everybody has been a victim of power, excessive power, and things like that. There are different names for different levels of powers. Judicial killing, all sorts of power on the road. The policemen, army on the road, they demonstrate that you have access to power, and it's used in so many ways. Land disputes, even quarrels among people. People like to show that they have access to power or the instruments of power. And I think it's part of the problem, or the way the society functions around here. It's almost impossible to ignore what power is and the effects of power, especially on the people.
Right.
Can we not argue as a follow-up that there is that diffusion of power, and I'm not referencing Foucault here, in terms of how the way it's been exercised by the representation of the military power,
Right.
can be complicated in two ways. Years ago, Max Weber made a point about the non-informal. So Ken is referencing the formal, by which you know the constitutions and the conventions. But Max Weber said in every society there's the informal. As in Adeboye now, his power is based on Pentecostalism. If at the end of every December, Adeboye will say, you must fast for 2 months. And millions of people will fast for 2 months. And he has 500 acres of land in Texas, like 3 hours from where I am based. If he says, meet me there, over 1 million people will meet him there. That's one level. And then there's a street level. If you get into a cab in Lagos going to Ibadan, and the driver wants to ease himself, he doesn't take your permission. He will just stop his car, his taxi, ease himself. That's another form of power. Or I've been on the road from Lagos to Port Harcourt. Each time the driver wants to eat, you must be hungry yourself, because he doesn't take your permission. He gets to his regular booker, he parks his car, he doesn't say, I'm going to eat. He will just leave the bus. If you like, go follow him. If you like, stay in the bus. So we also see how that things manifest. How we will bring the argument is, are they responding to what those in former power are doing, in which they're sending bad signals, as in what we call the body language of power? If I live in Buhari's Nigeria, I'm not going to worry, because the president himself, his body language says he's not worried. So why should I worry as the vice chancellor of the University of Ibadan if my boss on the top is not worried?
Right. So power is always in a relationship. And here we have Akandi, the servant, who is very servile, and we have the woman who is receiving the money, and she's a student, and so on. So you can't have power without relations to others. And at every level, we see the power inform this film. I don't know, TK, do you want to make any more comment on that, or we go on?
Well, except like I explained, that it is impossible to ignore, all this. This happens that every day. Everybody wants to get some kind of power. Everybody wants to demonstrate, to show that they have something that you haven't got, or have got something that is kind of power that are more powerful than you can be. And in this case, it means that, I have people I can call on, to just almost for any reason at all, just sometimes to just show, the power. Sometimes the way some people demonstrate power is that they don't have vehicle papers, any valid papers in their car. They drive it all around, and they assure you that nobody can stop them. And if they get stopped, all they have to do, if it gets out of hand, is to pick up their phone and call someone who says, give the phone to that person. And then maybe they talk to and say, now, here's your papers, you can go. That's some form of power, Right. So I don't, this is perhaps misuse of power, but it is there, Right. Sometimes people tell, who is that? You better not mess around with him or with her, because you can call on the Navy, to come out and deal with you. So I think that somehow, generally the people have, in a way, have managed to assert power at every level. Everything they have to do, well, if, for instance, you wanted employed in certain places and they say, it's closed. And say, what do you mean it's closed? Don't worry, I'll fix it. And they call and it's fixed. So I think that up to everybody has access to kind of power used wrongly or rightly, and that is what is in the society.
Okay, let me move on to the second, the second area, for which I use the word modernity. There are a million different ways we might want to think about what is modern or not, or what constitutes being modern or not. I think of two examples from your films, and we'll have the next two clips. The second clip I want to cut short, but the two clips that speak to a representation of modernity, often modernity, when represented in an African context, is presented as though it were from a foreign world, from Europe or the United States or outside of Africa. And there are at least two areas where I see this modernity question arising. The most obvious might be medicine, notion of modern medicine, as opposed to traditional healing. Thinking of Thunderbolt or Dazzling Mirage as two films where this question of how one treats illness intersects with the notion of modernity. And perhaps the second is, what does it mean to be a modern woman in today's world, where again we have, which are something like conflicting notions of what it means to be a modern woman. Often modernity in your film might be presented as a way of a woman having more power if she is linked into this modern world, but also modernity is represented contrary-wise as something quite negative. So let's look at the clips. I have the next two clips I want to do, which come from Abeni. It's a film I really loved. And we have this ridiculous character, the young man, Ogugu, who has returned from America. And you can't think of that scene without laughing. Absolutely. It's hilarious. And it's in two clips because I made a mistake. But go ahead, Abina, please. Ogugu has returned home.
Adamu, mo fẹ́ kó listen sí ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo fẹ́ bá sọ, ó ṣe pàtàkì o. Ǹjọ́ mọ̀ pé o kì í sọ ọmọdé mọ́. Rárá, o kì í sọ ọmọdé. O kì í ṣe gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọmọ Yorùbá, wàá máa ṣe bí ọmọ Ìgbò, wàá máa kó kíní sọ́rùn, máa fi yarí ní sétí, aṣọ bí àwọn amúgbó, àmọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ sọ, ó tún máa ṣeré, ọmọ ṣe bí arúgbó, ọmọ ṣe bí amúgbó, kò dá rárá. Ẹ wò, mo fẹ́ kọ́ tẹ́sọ yẹn o, mi ò fẹ́ kọ́ tẹ́sọ rárá àtọ̀, ẹ̀yin ò síta náà, kò sí ẹ̀kọ́ tó rọ̀ pẹ̀lú ohun tí mo wọ̀, ẹ̀yin àsìkò yìí ti lọ, àwọn àwọn tá sí ohun tí mo wọ̀ yìí bá bọ́ta, wọ́n máa kó mi jẹ lóríṣiríṣi. Dáadé ó kó ọ jẹ, àwọn tí wọ́n kó mi jẹ, àwọn owó, wọ́n kó ọ jẹ. Ẹ wò dádì, wọn ò fẹ́ mi ṣe wá síbi ẹ̀ láìkẹ́, ẹ fún mi lówó jẹ́jẹ́ kí n padà síbi tí mo lọ lọ́la. Ibi ò bá rí ọ̀dọ̀, kọ́bọ̀ mi gan ò lè tẹ̀ ọ lọ́mọ, ó rò pé mo lè waste owó lé ọ lórí mọ́ni. mo ní kó lọ fún lọ ó lọ waste owó mi l'Amẹ́ríkà kọ́bọ̀ mi ò lè rí gbà mọ́. Dádì kí ni.
Dádì ẹ ní sùúrù ọmọdé ló ń ṣe.
ọmọdé ìyàwó ní í ṣe. Dádì ẹ wò bó tẹ̀ sọ yẹn mi láìkẹ́ rárá tọ̀ táwọn pé oúnjẹ ilẹ̀ fẹ́ fún mi mọ́ èmi kò tó jẹ́ iná máa lọ sí hòtẹ́ẹ̀lì máa lọ jẹun.
kí ló dé tó gbà á ṣé mo fẹ́ bá yín gbé ni bọ́ọ̀ bá wa gbé máa kọrí bí ọba lọ ó wúlò nínú ilé tẹ́lẹ̀ ìwọ tó lọ Amẹ́ríkà tó lọ rí gbé wéèrè wálé ọ̀dà bí ọba rí ọ máa lọ.
ẹ mo lọ
ẹ lọ ẹ jáde wèrè yín tiẹ̀ pọ̀ yín méjèèjì àti làkù àti làkùkù ẹ kóra yín bọ́tà ẹ kóra yín bọ́tà ẹ̀yin wèrè ládàradà olórí ikú àwọn ládàradà ẹ wo alágẹmọ ti bí mẹ́ta àìmọ́ tó kù sọ́wọ́ yín.
Stop it. Obina, you can stop it now. So my favorite line, one of my favorite lines is, you went to America and came back with madness. That's like the greatest line in the world. I love that. So it's I don't know. I'm framing this in terms of the son who thinks he belongs to the new modern world, and the father who's represented as older, more traditional. So I'm asking you to comment on the various aspects, many various aspects of modernity and the good and the bad side. But here, I suppose it's also the funny side. This 419 scammer who's represents a new modern world. Would you comment on that?
Well, I think that the more you are alienated from your own culture, that is, as a result of cultural vacuum, anything can follow. You know, complete breakdown of oneself, because America must be diverse. You know, there are various levels of opportunities, various levels of role models, and so on. So that's the way some young people, what they see, you know, they take after what you can see, the way they dress, the chain, the gold chains, the coloring of the hair, and all that. I think that's, you know, some form of life. It must be in America, and this is the way they've gone. It's interesting to know that some of my friends that came from America, you know, as I was listening to them, some of the dialogue you see are not really written. I take it right off from their mouth.
Yeah.
And it gets worse, because I read in an American magazine, you know, for students, and I found one of my friends on the pages of this paper. He's done very well in the school, and he's become some kind of a student union, got a position in the student union and so on. So I'm really proud of him. And the next time he was in Nigeria and Lagos for, you know, for a vacation or something like that, I told him how, you know, proud I felt when I saw that he had become some kind of representative, you know, of the student. And I said, you know, forget about that, you know, don't mind them, they kicked me out. And then he said, well, you know that he said it in the Yoruba language and said, you know that Ifiniwa, you know, sooner or later they got to know about me, and so they just putted me out of that office. And he told me that, don't worry, forget about them. You know, it's one stupid Liberian people didn't allow us to you know, take all their money and spend it and things like that. So I take it I listen to young people and the representation of America they bring back, you know. Not, of course, I know thousands, a lot more, who are in school, who are doing very well in their choosing profession. But there are others too who go to the other side and they come back with that and flaunt it, you know, and then show that they have become tougher, you know, they're more modern and things like that. I think it's slice of life, really.
Right. But
let me jump into it by talking about a dialogue of reversal in which people leave Africa, they come to the US, they go to Europe, And it's there they rediscover Africa. So, in which Africa now begins its own process of modernizing them.
Right.
My friends who listen to Yusuf, for instance, and Aruna Ishola, I was the one who introduced this music to them. They knew about the music in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends who wear Yoruba clothes, they confessed to me that it's when they saw a professor who does not wear English clothes that they became confident to be wearing Yoruba clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't even have a Western suit, for instance. I don't have one. I use, this is Sophia, I converted to a suit, so many. And then I've persuaded a group of people to be dressing like me. So I call that reverse Africanization. It even took place during the Atlantic in terms of creolization, hybridity, and things like that. So what happens in Nollywood, the ones that take Africa abroad, with few exceptions, is mockery. So Nigerians in Atlanta or Shofa in London, in which people who are elitist in Africa now convert themselves to what, not mimicry, just mockery. Because even if it is mimicry, that may even be a better deal.
Yeah.
So they begin to mock their own accent, mock their own food, mock their own dress.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not expecting you to give us full answers because this is just a conversational reflection. What would you think about that?
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, please. Yes, Ken.
No, I think that it sort of leads to the next question, but which is, can't we think of the modernity? What is about the notion of a construction of an African modernity? And that Toyin's question, sort of this notion of how mockery plays into it as an African response, not simply a response to the other or outside, but the African construction of modernity, which needs not be the mimicry of the outsider's modernity. I mean, that was just a thought I had. But TK, what were you going to say?
Yes, I was going to say, that perhaps it depends on one's background and all that, because at least I spent maybe 2 years in England, and of course, it didn't change anything in me because I already have an identity and I wasn't about looking for anything different. But I've seen people who they go away shortly, and then I think they have to prove, that they have been exposed, and then they have to in your face that look, we are different, we have been outside, we have new experiences, and this is what they bring back. And believe me, I look around these days and I see that even people who have not left Nigeria are already dressing like that, and they're doing all these things from effects of what they consume coming from outside. And when I see young people these days, I realize they are not dressing too differently. So I don't think it has to do with going to America now, because America has now come to Africa.
Right.
They've come into our homes. It's all here, and it's tough, trying to show yourself. The competition is not here. The war now has been brought into us, into Africa here. So we don't know what the next generation, what they will do. They don't have to go to America before they start to behave like a Gagu, and people like that, and so on. So I think it's an invasion of some sort.
So the last clip that I'll play, and then I'll stop, will take us back to the same issue, exactly what you just said and what Toyin said, which is a question of how we think about culture and tradition, and the betrayal of it. Let me do the Obina, we'll do the last clip, and then any comments people have. You'll see how apropos it is when you watch it. This is a professor in Campus Queen. I think it's a famous scene, right? We hope you all remember this scene where he's talking to his students about the importance of tradition, and it sort of perfectly speaks to what we've been discussing.
Development is not about a few people, a few individuals, the way we have it in this country, where we have a few solitary, huge mansions in the midst of millions of mud houses. So, to have a true perspective and for true development, we must go back to our culture, to our past, because the past is not dead. As a matter of fact, according to Faulkner, the past is not past. The past is in the present. It is alive. But unfortunately, the African elite is ever ready to go only in the direction of where the West has been. For example, how do we explain the retention after independence of those ugly, ridiculous, imported Tokumba wigs on the legal heads of our so-called learned men? That is a clear example of the African mind's inability to force itself out of the gridlock of Western imperialism. Now I may take a few questions. Yes, lady.
Sir, your lecture this morning goes right to the heart of the African elite's dilemma and the contradictions in their lives. Sir, you're an advocate of culture, but there you are in front of us in this fantastic Western suit with a gorgeous tie.
That is a very intelligent and insightful question, and I thank you for it. I want to assure you that this outfit, which makes me a pitiable parody of the Western man, is not a true reflection of the cultural state of my mind. But to avoid any contradictions, I want to make a promise today. From today, I stop wearing Western style dresses.
Okay, so that just speaks to what we just heard. I think that's kind of wonderful. If you want to comment on that, I mean, we could talk about it forever. I'm done with my presentation. Any comment you want to make on this clip from you or for Toyin would be welcome.
You can ask questions to close this segment of Kenaro's contribution. If you don't have to, it's not mandatory. But I don't want to deny you of any opportunity or privilege. Tunde Adebola. Okay. So if there are
perhaps, sorry, Tim. Perhaps, I don't know how it happened, but the awareness came to me almost quite natural in secondary school. I had already started to decide what I wanted to do, how I was going to dress and things like that. But I had the problem because at that time you couldn't even attend an interview without the tie on your neck. And the problem is that I didn't know how to tie it and I didn't want to learn it. So I had only one tie and my father did it for me. So I would, anytime I wanted to go out, I had to appear like that. I had to put my neck in the noose, and be very careful, So, and when I came back, I gladly removed it. And I started to try as much as I could that as soon as I could be liberated and get rid of it, then that would be a great milestone in my life. And so when I started filmmaking and all that, I was finally free. And, you know, I carry these things too far sometimes. And sometimes I say that, yes, I've put on Western suit and tie at one time or the other in my life, but I've already apologized to God, you know, for it.
Apologize to God.
You know, I said I've already apologized to God, and there's nothing. As soon as I was free, you know, which wasn't long before, maybe before I was 30 or something like that, I decided I was not going to put it on again. You know, so it's very interesting to me, and I must acknowledge that Akim Ishola, you know, had a hand, more than a hand in that, because we spoke. You know, we agreed on these things, and he put it so well. In the next thing, he came in his own African attire, like he promised the students, and everybody hailed him. And you would have, you know, perhaps some of them will be converted, because I think that part of the problems of Africans, or in Nigeria particularly, is we have neglected our intangible heritage. It's vast. You know, this is, if we tapped into all these things, it's more than oil. You know, oil will dry out. In fact, it's on the way out. And so if we had developed those things, you know, that our way of life, perhaps our lives could be a lot better than this.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your intervention.
Baba yetu liye binguni yetu amina. Baba yetu liye funjina lako weli tukuzwe. Baba yetu